Hi everyone, welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need here in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. That's how this works best, when the topics we cover are based on your real-time needs as potential and actual olim. You can always write to us by email, Hebrew at Hebrew at nbn.org.il. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us in the chat box here on the at the bottom of the screen. We just ask that you keep any personal conversation to a minimum, as there are now more than 200. We're currently at 226 participants live on Zoom, which is absolutely amazing when you think that 220 now 8 participants are joining live to learn Hebrew. These things don't happen anywhere else but here, folks, which is pretty amazing. You can always write to us by email. You can also check all of our previous lessons on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh. You'll see a playlist with all of our previous lessons. We have more than 100 lessons up there on a whole variety of topics. And the last, I would say 40 to 50 of them, maybe slightly less, have the vocabulary spreadsheets that we often go through with each class. So please take some time in between classes to go through them, see what we've covered, what we haven't covered in a while. You can always review. This class will be up in the next day or so up there. And we're also excited to continue with our Cafe Oleh Conversations class. This is a class based on our this class here. So we teach together on Mondays. On Wednesdays, we meet as a smaller group and have the chance to practice the words that we're learning here and some conversation prompts to just practice what we have, using our existing Hebrew, using the Hebrew we learned this week in small breakout rooms. This class is really meant for a beginner's level. That class on Wednesday is meant for a slightly higher level because we're asking people to come already with some Hebrew involved, but we always make room for everyone. So we're excited to be back here for the spring session and looking forward to this session, which is going to be a lot about renewal. That is, after all, what spring is all about, renewal and regrowth. And so we're going to be visiting topics we have covered in the past, maybe even a couple of times in the past, but we haven't done in a while, or the spreadsheet that goes with them is either old or was never attached because this was before we upgraded everything we do here with Cafe Oleh. So we're going to be revisiting a lot of popular previous classes, and you'll see that in the upcoming classes. And at the end of this class, I'll tell you what next class is about. So you'll want to stay tuned for that at the top of the hour. With that, normally this time of year, basically the moment Purim, the last big holiday we celebrated, is over, Israelis are in a mad rush because the most celebrated holiday in Israel, and frankly by Jews around the world, is the next big holiday. Some of you may call it Passover. In Hebrew, we call it Pesach. And it's a really big deal in Israel. There'll be nonstop ads, cooking shows, gift ideas, interviews about what to bring, what to do, what to talk about at the dinner table. And unfortunately, we're still living in a war. Now 179 days in, 134 kidnapped still in Gaza. So understandably, the mood is very different here in Israel, not to mention tens of thousands of Israeli citizens who aren't able to go back to their homes. So the mood is different, and you see that in popular media as well, whether that's online and more particularly on TV. Israelis love watching TV. They're glued to the 8 p.m. Nightly news, which just started 6 minutes ago here in Israel, as we started recording here. And certainly since the start of the war, the news has been the major source of content for a lot of TV stations. We've talked about that in the last session. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get ready for Pesach in a slightly different way. Normally, I would want to show you several different types of commercials because Israeli commercials really come in two categories. They're either really direct, and basically it's a loud announcer telling you to buy something, or it's doing all sorts of word plays and certainly drawing on Jewish tradition to tell you a story. And certainly for Pesach, that's normally the case. They're fun, they're inventive, they're entertaining. And people talk about really good commercials, just like they do in other countries. There aren't so many this year. It's granted it's 3 weeks away, but we would be in the height of preparations for Pesach. We have yet to see a lot of that. But we are going to look at 2 examples, and I've vetted these multiple times. These are really easy to understand at an introductory level. Because of the level of Hebrew. It's also because they're commercials, so there's graphics, there's visuals that go with it so you can understand it. And that also gives us a segue to talk about one important part of Pesach, which is cleaning. Many of us do spring cleaning this time of year, whether it's for Pesach or not. And you see that also in the sales. One of the first sales in grocery stores and supermarkets and in general are sales for cleaning products and overall redoing your house, getting ready for the spring. So that could be cleaning products, that could be furniture. We're going to look at some words to get us through some of those things. And then we're going to look at 2 types of commercials. To again, first off, if you watch TV in Israel, and hopefully you do, because there's no better way to get both your Hebrew and your Israeli cultural knowledge and IQ up than consuming what everyday Israelis consume: TV, radio, internet, and so forth. We're going to look at one ad on TV and one ad that's on the internet. They're, again, very basic, but they get you slowly, however much we can, get in the mood for Pesach. As we get closer to the holiday, we'll do more about Pesach. But in the meantime, let me share with you the vocabulary we're going to look at today before we go to our video section. So as always, if you are signed up online with us via Zoom, you will get a copy of this or a link to download it. It will also be on YouTube as well in the description when this video, this session gets recorded and uploaded, which will be in the next 1 to 2 days. Okay, so by the way, as I'm talking, if you have any questions about this specific class, just as a reminder, if you have questions about this specific class, write it in the Q&A, please, if you're joining us live on Zoom. Any other questions, concerns, comments about Cafe Oleh or what we're teaching or Hebrew in general, you can keep that in the chat, but I'll only be looking at the Q&A. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay, so let's get started. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, so first off, some of this is going to be review. Like I said, it's always good to do review, and especially this time of year, and that's going to be a lot of what we do this semester. So first off, we've talked about this word a lot. We talk about shopping, we talk about consumer affairs and consumer rights a lot in this class, and one of those words you always need to know is mivtza. Mivtza is our first word. It means a sale, S-A-L-E. It can also, by the way, mean a military operation. Anyone who's been to a sale in an Israeli store or a mall knows it feels like a military operation with all the people and the hustle that's going around with it. As always, we put the Hebrew in the middle of the chart. Transliteration for a English-friendly audience is on the right. There is no standardized transliteration in Hebrew for Hebrew, so we do what we can. English on the left, along with the gender, when possible. And as we've done increasingly in previous classes, we're going to add the shoresh, the 3-letter root that's at the heart of all Hebrew words: nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so forth. All of them have a root, and those roots have a general meaning plugged into a specific form, either called a mishkal or a binyan. You get the word itself and its unique meaning. So very important to get the root of words in order to understand their meaning and how to use them. Okay, with that, so mivtza, simple word, sale. The plural is mivtzaim, even though, excuse me, one of the reasons we put the root here is because spelling in Hebrew is destiny. You need to spell, you can't always spell based on how a word sounds, because in Hebrew, and we've done previous classes on this in terms of pronunciation and spelling, things have changed over the centuries. This is a great example. If someone who's just learning Hebrew hears the word mivtza, they'll think that because, well, I learned in my Hebrew class that any word that ends in the ah sound is female, they're going to think this is a female word. This is not a female word because it does not end in ah. It ends in an ayin. Ayin is considered a consonant. Okay. And as such, it is not mivtza feminine, it's mivtza masculine, and the plural is mivtzaim. Okay, there's nothing unique about this word in the sense that it's anything irregular or anything like that. It's mivtza, mivtzaim. Okay, so again, spelling is crucial. And we've talked about that before, both in terms of anyone who has cognitive issues and challenges with regards to letters. We've also talked about that, by the way, with children of Israelis who lived abroad and learned Hebrew by talking, but not necessarily writing and spelling. This is a great example, mivtzaim. Okay. Next word, no less important, anacha. We've done a lot of classes with the word anacha. I'm just putting it in here as a good reminder when we start looking at ads, the words that you're going to look for and the words that are going to pop up a lot. Anacha means discount. Okay. I put this in here because it's in one of the two commercials we're going to look at, but this is important. We've talked about superlatives before. And superlatives, it's very easy to make superlatives in Hebrew, right? It's not like in English where you have to know, is it one of those words where I add ER or EST at the end, or I have to use more or most? In Hebrew, there's only one way to do it. And when we talk about the most of something, in this case, the cheapest, one of the ways we can make that is hazol beyoter. We have a whole previous class on that, including with the spreadsheet. So I don't want to go into it, but this specific line is in one of the commercials we're going to see. But just know you could plug in any adjective for this word zol, which means inexpensive or cheap, right? And yoter means more. Beyoter means the most. So this is the most cheapest, aka the cheapest, right? Because in Hebrew, we don't have that most or not with most, or more and not with more. You could add hayakar beyoter, right? Hayakar means expensive, right? So hayakar beyoter is the most expensive, right? Again, think how I just said that. The cheapest versus the most expensive. In Hebrew, we don't have that. It's simply hazol beyoter and hayakar beyoter. One way to do superlatives. Hebrew is a lot easier than you think, folks. Equally important when we talk about ads, especially this time of year where people are trying to save money, both in general because holidays can add up in prices, but also owing to the war in our situation, prices on very basic goods have gone up. So people are looking for a variety or a diversity or assortment of things. Know that word in general is migvan. Okay, migvan is not just prices and goods. It could be a diversity of people, a diversity of backgrounds, a diversity of voices. Whatever it is, the Hebrew word equivalent is migvan. Okay, when we're talking about cleaning products, it's always important to read the instructions. If you've ever read instructions for products in Israel, you know that there's often a sticker on it that's in Hebrew for the local audience, and it's a lot of instructions. I'm not going to go through all of them. We've done that in the past. Just know what to look for. Oftentimes, though, you can either remove the sticker very carefully or find it online and find the English version if it's too difficult for you to read, but most of them pretty much follow the same pattern. Okay, but what you're going to look for in terms of instructions for use is the word horaot. Horaot means instructions, and ofen hashimush is the means of usage, the way of using something. Ofen is way or style or type, and shimush is usage, U-S-A-G-E. Okay, either one means instructions for use when you see that on a label, and in general, by the way. And likewise, whether it's a cleaning product or in general, notes or remarks on anything, on an academic paper, in the newspaper, on TV, whatever it may be, are he'arot. Okay, he'ara is one note or remark. He'arot are notes or remarks. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at our shoresh nun kuf Hey. Nun kuf hey, as you see here on the left-hand side, is always going to refer to something having to do with cleaning. Always. Okay? And we know that not just because we see that right here clearly illustrated by the words that come out of this one root. This one root, nun kuf aleph, is responsible for at least these 4 words. There's many more that also go with them. First off, nikui. Nikui means cleaning, the act of cleaning. Okay, you can think of it as a verbal noun. That is its actual grammatical structure. It's called a gerund, otherwise the ing of something. In this case, cleaning, right? Nikui is cleaning. Nikayon, which sounds very similar. You probably confuse these 2 words and use them interchangeably. Most of the time, that's all right. Nikayon, however, technically means cleanliness, right? So if you go to a national park in Israel or any well-kept place and it has a sign that says Shmor al Hanikayon, it's saying keep the place clean, right? That's how we would translate it into English. It literally says keep the cleanliness or protect the cleanliness. Okay, but we would translate this namely into English, please keep this place clean. Maybe not even with the please. Okay, so nikui, cleaning, nikayon, cleanliness. Minakeh is the verb. It's the present tense of the verb. Linakot is to clean. Cleans, excuse me, is minakeh. We've talked about this before, and we're going to talk about it again in next week's class, and I'll tell you what that's about in the top of the hour. Minakeh, in the present tense in Hebrew, and this is a big difference between modern Hebrew that we teach here and what many of you or some of you may know, which is biblical Hebrew or Talmudic Hebrew or the prayer Hebrew that you read in prayers, is the present tense. Present tense is is something that's much more used and common in modern Hebrew. And in modern Hebrew, the present tense is also the participle. It's the same way that we form the participle. What is a participle? A participle can be a noun, an adjective, or a verb. And we've done a whole class on it. We're going to come back to it again next week, that word. But just know when we say cleans, right, it could be that the product is a cleaning product or the product that cleans, but also I clean. I don't clean so much, unfortunately. I'm very bad at it, or bad at remembering to do it. But the point is, in the present tense, it's both a verb and it's also a participle. So that's important why I put cleans here and not cleaning, or I clean or you clean. But if I was to conjugate this verb, linakot, and I'll add it here as we're talking, in fact, just so you see that there is a verb, the infinitive of the verb, right? To clean. Lenakot. Okay, it would be minakeh, minaka, minakim, minakot in the present tense. Ani minakeh, or ani lo minakeh, I don't clean. He lo minaka, she does not clean. Anachnu minakim, we clean. Hen minakot, they clean. Okay, very simple, but just know it's both clean, cleaning, and cleans, if we were to translate into English correctly. And then finally, the adjective clean, because I haven't said the word clean or cleanly or any of those words enough, is naki. Naki is the adjective, naki, nikiya, nikiyim, nikiyot. Okay, so if the place is clean, hamakom naki. Okay. Let's move on to more specific words when it comes to cleaning products, because as of now, you've probably heard the word naki and nikayon and nikui. Let's get to some other ones. Disinfectant. Right? We live in a post-corona world, and anyways, you should know these words. Chitui is disinfectant. A product that is disinfectant contains, or a product that has some disinfectant agent, it will say chitui on it. And a product that disinfects will be described as mechate. Again, present tense, remember? So a product that disinfects, we can translate that either as a verb or as a participle. Mechate, however, is the word. Mechate, mechatet, mechatim, mechatot. Okay, the root here is chet, tet, aleph. interesting of this word, it also is related to the word for sin in Hebrew, chet. You can think of that in terms of disaffecting and sins. However, Hebrew is both very conservative and it also can get very creative in how words with the same shoresh are related or not. There are some words that are simply not related, but they have the same shoresh. Okay, some other things we look for when we look at cleaning products. Again, whether it's getting ready for Pesach, and that's why we're talking about this, because that's a lot of what the ads are on TV and on radio and in print right now, or in general. You're going to look for something not just that mechate, as we said before, you're going to look for something that mashmid. Mashmid is obliterates. It can also be translated as annihilates or destroys, but it's really obliterates in this case. Malbin. Malbin is always important, especially we'll get to another important word that has to do with halbana. Malbin should already send off some signals to those of you who have a little bit of Hebrew behind you, particularly colors. If you look at the word malbin, quickly try to understand, without looking on the left-hand side, what the shoresh is. Okay, if you already looked or you can hear it already or see in the word, it's lamed bet nun. Lamed bet nun gets us the word lavan. Lavan is the color white in Hebrew. Okay, so malbin is the causative form of a verb, and we'll talk about that again next week. Malbin means to whiten something. So for example, if you're looking for toothpaste that whitens your teeth, you're going to look for this word, malbin. It might be the verbal noun, halbana, but the point is anything that has this root, lamed bet nun, means that it's something to do with white. In this case, to cause something to become white, i.e. to whiten. Okay, so that could be about walls, that could be about appliances or sinks or anything like that. Equally, masir. Masir comes from the verb lehasir, which is to remove. Okay, we have a couple different verbs we use in Hebrew that translate into English as to remove. This one is simply, for example, masir shumanim. Shuman is fat. Fat as in noun, fat. Shumanim, fats. So if you see a product that says masir shumanim, it's a grease remover, right? It literally removes fat, i.e. removes grease. We use the same word in Hebrew. Okay, masir shumanim. That's just one example. You would see this word masil. Okay, there's obviously other actions that cleaning products do. These are some of the big ones you're going to immediately look for when it comes to spring cleaning and cleaning everything up. Now, what are you cleaning up? One of the things you're cleaning up is chaydakim. And especially post-corona, and there were a lot of products that are still to this day here in Israel marketed towards killing chaydakim, including viruses. Corona is a virus, not a chaydak, but still important to know this word. Chaydakim. Chaydakim comes from two words. Remember, modern Hebrew is both the descendant of ancient Hebrew, but it's also used in a modern setting. So like other languages, it had to create words for modern situations. We've talked about this in the past when I always love talking about the fact that Hebrew has words for the elements, right? Not all the words are cognates in English or Latin or Greek. We have our own words for some of the elements, some of the big elements that we've been using since Hebrew was first invented 3,000-4,000 years ago. This is a great example of a modern word for a modern understanding of our world and the universe using two Hebrew words, chaydakim. Chaydakim is comprised of two words, chay and dak. Okay, you don't look up ancient Hebrew to find the word chaydakim. It won't be there. And this isn't coming from any other language other than Hebrew. Chay, life, right? Life. We know the word chayim, l'chaim. Chay simply means life. Dak means small or slim, or oftentimes also thin or tender even, but very small. So the idea of small, thin, life, what is the smallest or thinnest thing that is living? bacteria or germs. Okay, chaydakim are bacteria or germs in modern Hebrew. We have a lot of words like that, by the way, in Hebrew. I'll always point out them because I think it's just amazing how we create these words, and they have context that we can still look at and understand. We're talking about something very small. By the way, another construct that we use the same exact thing are chayzarim. Chay, again, life. Zar means foreign. A chayzar is an alien, a foreign life. Chayzar, foreign life. Chayzar. Okay? Chaydakim, chaydak, bacteria or germ. One of the other things that if you are brand new to Israel or you have forgotten over the years, and I remember this every winter, not just wherever I live, but especially in working with Olim and internationals in Israel. I teach in a gap year program, and in the middle of winter, they came in totally despondent, freaking out because their windows and walls were covered in ovesh. Now, there are several types of ovesh in Israel, but the vast majority of the one that we see is harmless. It happens to be black, but it is not black mold. And that's an important distinction when you come to Israel, to remember that the vast majority of our homes in Israel, apartments and otherwise, are not insulated like they are in the rest of the world. So when there is a significant temperature change, air temperature between inside and outside, ovesh is often the case. And so many homes in Israel during the winter have ovesh. It is not a judgment on you. It is just the way buildings are built in Israel. Okay. But ovesh is something that's easily cleaned with all those other words that we just talked about. We'll talk about one of the products that's most used for it in just a second. Okay. But ovesh means mold. And here is the word. This is one of the things when you are looking to clean up anything that may have ovesh or chaydakim on it, you're going to look for a product that contains economica. Okay, economica is a genericized trademark in Israel. It is used as a term in other countries. If you're coming from North America, you've probably not heard this word before. First off, we don't have many words that we normally use with that at the end. Economica. Economica has nothing to do with economy, although it sounds like it. Economica is best thought of as bleach. It's not necessarily the bleach that we use on clothes, but is the bleach that we use to kill ovesh and chaydakim, mold and bacteria. Okay. The specific thing that it includes, as I wrote here in the notes, is sodium hypochlorite, for those of you who really needed to know that. But no, it has a form of chlorine in it. It's used as bleach. Any cleaning product that says it has economica, you know that it's there to kill germs and bacteria as well as mold. So a lot of spray products have that. A lot of wipes have it in it. Overall used in Israel. Another term that you're going to use, not for bleach, because bleach is different, is chlorine. If you're looking for that or you're sensitive to it, the word is chlor. This is one of those words that is not, however, a unique element name in Hebrew. It's chlor. Okay. Nozel. Some of our products are going to come as nozel, liquid, and some of them are going to come as ketzef, foam. Those of you who think that this word sounds familiar, ketzef, you would be right. It is related to the word katsefet. Katsefet is whipped cream. It can also be shaving cream, by the way, although we say creme giluach, literally the cream used for shaving, but the consistency both looks the same. Katsefet is typically used when we say whipped cream. Okay, but it's anything that is foamy is ketzef, or has this root kuf zayin pei. Okay. And then finally, before you get to our commercials, is an important one, whether you're looking to save some money on cleaning products or in general, to know what this means. This is another way that we create new words in Hebrew by looking at other languages and mimicking them, both because we're importing products. We don't live in an island. Thank God we are part of the modern world. And part of that includes trading with countries and with companies that create certain products. For example, a multi-purpose cleaning solution. right? How do you say multi-purpose in Hebrew? We're going to take multi-purpose and we're going to translate it literally into Hebrew. Multi in modern Hebrew is rav. Rav, yes, we think of Rav as rabbi, rebbe, whatever it is. Rav also means, in this case, many. Think of the word rov, majority, right? It's related to that in the sense of many, or in this case, when it comes at the beginning of the word and it's followed by a hyphen, like here, rav, it means multi. It's the equivalent to the prefix multi in Hebrew. And then tachliti. Tachlit is purpose, okay? And tachliti is simply the adjective form. Many adjectives in Hebrew can simply be formed by adding a yud at the end of a noun. In this case, tachlit becomes tachliti. So a product that advertises itself as rav tachliti means that it's multi-purpose. For example, if you like to bake, you're probably used to, or perhaps don't like using kemach rav tachliti, all-purpose flour, right? All works in a lot of different places. Multi-purpose, all-purpose, rav tachliti. Tachlit, by the way, is the word that it is not in modern Hebrew, and I always want to, on the one hand, not confuse you all by saying a word that sounds familiar to it, but is not modern Hebrew, but I also don't want to judge or make you feel judged when we talk about accents. Everyone in Israel has an accent, but there is modern Hebrew, and modern Hebrew has its own pattern. It has its own default of where syllables are and how letters are pronounced. In this case, this is a great example of a word that many of you have heard, especially from abroad, and you're not going to hear as often in Hebrew, although frankly it is used as slang in Israel, which is the word tachlis. Tachlis means like, let's get down to brass tacks, or a whole host of other ways. We've done many classes on slang, and this word, I love tachlis. It's a great word to use, but tachlis is the Ashkenazi Hebrew pronunciation of the word tachlit. Okay, so the word is rav tachliti, multi-purpose as an adjective. Okay, with that said, we're going to look at two commercials. These commercials are, I think, easy Hebrew. And if you don't think they're easy, don't worry about it. We're going to send you the links for both of these ads. You're going to be able to watch them multiple times. They're very easy to follow, even if you can't understand all the words. And that's important. You're never going to understand all the words, especially at a beginner's level. You need to go with the flow. You need to listen and watch as much as try to understand. Oftentimes, commercials, just like taped shows in Israel, will always have subtitles, so you can always read along if that's easier. And we're going to watch two different ads for Pesach. One is just a straight up commercial, and the other one is a much more Pesach commercial, and you'll understand why. We're going to first look at an ad apropos cleaning products. We're going to look at an ad from, where is it? There it is. One of the bigger supermarket chains in Israel, Rami Levy. Rami Levy prides itself on being one of the first discount supermarket chains in Israel. And what you're going to watch here is a lot of the words at first you don't need to focus on. What you're going to focus on is, remember I taught you hazol beyoter? Watch for when that happens to understand what you are watching. This is a very quick commercial. We'll watch it twice before we talk about it. Okay, actually, let me just make sure that I shared it correctly so you can also hear it. Yes, I did. Okay. Oh, sorry, wrong one. We'll get to that one in a second. Share screen. Where'd you go? Share sound. Optimize for video.
קבוצת גיאוקרטוגרפיה, המכון לקמעונאות, אייס, ישראל היום, וואלה, רדיו גלי ישראל ובחדרי חרדים בדקו מצאו. בפסח הזה, רמי לוי שיווק השקמה היא הרשת הזולה ביותר בתחום חומרי ניקוי לבית. קונים חכם, קונים רמי לוי שיווק השקמה, סל הקניות הזול במדינה. קבוצת גיאוקרטוגרפיה, המכון לקמעונאות, אייס, ישראל היום, וואלה, רדיו גלי ישראל ובחדרי חרדים בדקו מצאו. בפסח הזה, רמי לוי שיווק השקמה היא הרשת הזולה ביותר בתחום חומרי ניקוי לבית. קונים חכם, קונים רמי לוי שיווק השקמה, סל הקניות הזול במדינה.
Okay, so what did you hear just now, right? It said it was Rami Levy was proven. All those things that you saw at the beginning, right? All those logos you saw at the beginning, all these different agencies, ad agencies, marketing agencies, consumer agencies, right? Hamachon Lacheker Kamnoaot, the Institute for Research for Retail Research, right? ICE, which is a major marketing and PR agency. Israel Hayom, Israel's largest daily newspaper, right? Walla, Israel's largest online media outlet. Radio stations, all of them, right? They all badku v'matzu, badku, they checked, all those agencies checked, umatzu, and found that, let's see, בפסח הזה, רמי לוי שיווק השקמה, this Pesach, בפסח הזה, and then this is the formal name of Rami Levi's company, Rami Levi Shivuk HaShikma, that's just the name of the company. Keep talking. היא הרשת הזולה ביותר בתחום חומרי ניקוי לבית. Okay, reshet is a network. It's also a net, but it's also a network or a chain. You can also think of it as hazola biyoter. It's not zol, it's zola because it's referring to reshet, which is feminine, but it's that same thing. It's not just any reshet, it's not just any chain, it's hareshet hazola biyoter, the cheapest chain in what? Bitchum, in the field of, or in the category of chomrei nikui labait. Chomer is any material, okay, or product in this case. Nikui, we know that word, cleaning. Labait, for the house. So Rami Levi is hareshet hazola biyoter bitchum chomrei nikui labait. Rami Levi is the cheapest chain when it comes to, or in the field of, cleaning products for the home. Okay, and what you see here is an iconic cleaning product in Israel, which is a gel, right? I talked about nozel and ketzef. This is a gel that smells of pine oil and is used as a rav tachliti, a chomer rav tachliti, a multi-purpose material for cleaning. You can put it, mix it with water. You can scrub a little on all sorts of stains. It's great stuff. Okay, also notice how this commercial sounds.
קבוצת גיאוקרטוגרפיה, המכון לקמעונאות, אייס, ישראל היום, וואלה, רדיו גלי ישראל ובחדרי חרדים בדקו מצאו. בפסח הזה רמי לוי שיווק השקמה היא הרשת הזולה ביותר בתחום חומרי ניקוי לבית. קונים חכם, קונים רמי לוי שיווק השקמה, סל הקניות הזול במדינה.
Right, and the tagline is סל הקניות הזול ביותר, הזול במדינה. The cheapest, the least expensive supermarket buying goods in the state of Israel. Okay, listen to how that commercial sounded. It was very fast, right? Even those of you who think that all Israelis talk fast, that was very fast and it was very upbeat. That is a very typical style of Israeli commercials. It's very bombastic, in your face, fast, gets you intimidated and overwhelmed by the experience. I need to buy that. I need to buy it. Oh my God, this looks amazing. I need to get it, right? That's a very typical Israeli commercial. The next one we're going to look at is slightly slower. It's not so much slower, but it's not that bombasticness. But this one is an example of a Pesach commercial and why commercials can also be really unique and special in Israel. This one isn't as great as some in the past. This one is just because it's this year. So I want to not say that, share with you a sale that doesn't exist anymore. Those of you who have a stronger Jewish education or a stronger religious background, I want to be sure that you are paying attention, because if you don't catch on what they're talking about here, we need to do some review of Pesach, which anyways, we're going to do. And I'm going to explain how Jewish this commercial is if you don't understand it on your own. So let me share that. This is a commercial for, well, you'll see in a second. You'll tell me.
47 מי יודע? 47
אני יודעת. פסח באירופלקס, עד 47% הנחה על מגוון מוצרים בחנויות ובאתר.
מי ידע?
אני ידעתי.
אירופלקס.
Right, simple, quick, but immediately tells not only what the commercial is, but puts it in an immediate Israeli Jewish context. Why? So first off, you know what it's for. Aeroflex sells furniture. Migvan motzarim labayit, right? You saw a mita, a bed. You saw a kursa, a chair. But what was happening and what was the context? 47 mi yodea. 47, who knows? 47 ani yodat. I know 47. What is that from? That's from the Haggadah, the thing that we read on Leila Seder, at the Seder table on Pesach, right? That is one of the many songs at the end of, towards the end of the Seder, one of those rounds, songs we sing in rounds. Echad mi yodea, right? Who knows one? Very classic song. Everyone knows the song. Everyone knows the reference. They immediately see that. They know it has something to do with Pesach. And like I said, Pesach in Israel is also about renewing your home, whether you're having guests over or not. There's another commercial that's going on about furniture, and the idea of getting new furniture so that her family will want to actually stay longer in the house. But what we just saw there, right? And we'll show it to you again. It's really quick. And I'll even pause it as we're watching it so you can really understand it. Right?
47 מי יודע? 47
אני יודעת.
Right? 47 מי יודע? Who knows what is 47? 47 אני יודעת. I know what 47 is. 47 is
פסח באירופלקס, עד 47% הנחה על
עד 47% הנחה. Up to 47% discount על מגוון מוצרים, on a variety or an assortment of מוצרים products.
מגוון מוצרים בחנויות ובאתר.
על חנויות ובאתר, on our stores and באתר online. מי ידע? מי ידע?
מי ידע?
אני ידעתי.
אירופלקס 47 מי יודע? 47
And in case the מי ידע, אני יודע wasn't clear enough, if you listen very carefully in the background, it is the song אחד מי יודע, instrumental, right? In this very sort of poppy synthesizer sound. Okay, so that's the other type of commercial we get in Israel. That's also putting us in the mood, right? We want something that contextualizes us in order to buy it, obviously for Pesach right now. And it's trying to say in this current climate, we can't do the usual shtick of Pesach commercials like we do in the past. It may not feel appropriate, but this is a great example to get us in the mood. And it's something that an Israeli audience, an Israeli Jewish audience immediately gets, right? Ani yoda, mi yodea, everyone knows that at this time, but also the music in the background, whether you hear it or not, is the song itself. That's a much more contextual Jewish/Israeli commercial, whereas the first one was just a bombastic commercial, albeit talking about something Jewish. Okay, with that, I want to take some questions and let you know about next week's class, as well as remind you about this week's Wednesday Cafe Oleh Conversations, which has been renewed, and we're excited to bring that back to you. If you have not signed up for it and you're interested, we're going to be going over this week on Wednesday. This is not next week's class, this is this week's conversation class. We're going to be talking about how to share ideas and memories with regards to Pesach. It's a great time to swap ideas, swap stories and memories, because that's a lot of what Pesach is about. We're going to talk about how do we share ideas, how do we share recommendations, how do we share memories, equally important. Okay, some questions. Is the shoresh for horaot without an aleph? It is indeed. Let me pull that back up. The shoresh for the word instruction is Yud Resh He. Okay. What about achitov for the most? No. So achitov means the best, right? But that's only modifying the word, the adjective tov. What if I wanted to say the cheapest, right? Because the best isn't always the cheapest and vice versa. I can use the other construct like you wrote here, hachi zol, and we have a whole class on adjectives and superlatives before, but hazol beyoter is the other way to do the most. They both mean the exact same thing. Why does migvan have two vavs? There is a spelling rule, and we've done a class on spelling, and we've done spelling before. Why is there this? So first off, remember that because this is meant for beginners, I put in the nikud, the dots and bars that indicate vowel sounds. Everyday Hebrew, you will not see these dots and bars, so you are welcome. We only use these like training wheels when you're learning Hebrew, or when a word could be spelled and have multiple meanings. You'll see that in newspapers as well. Migvan has two vavs, and I put it there with the nikud because as all of our classes, and if you've joined us before, you'll know this, this is for beginners, right? So first off, we don't teach nikud because no one teaches nikud. I put them in there so that people can read them. In everyday Hebrew, you wouldn't have these nikud, but it would be spelled with two vavs because if I took out the nikud, right? If I took out this, this, and I took out one of these vavs, I wouldn't know how to pronounce this word. I could look at that word and pronounce it incorrectly. Putting the other vav in there, right, makes sure I know this word is mikvan. I know it from other contexts, but it has to be mikvan. That vav there is to ensure I pronounce the letter as vav and not as a placeholder for any other sound. Okay. That's the easiest way I'm going to explain it. And for the person who's asking about nikud, this is a class for beginners, and even at advanced levels, they don't teach about nikud. So I'm going to leave it at that. Achi zol beyoter. Both of them are okay. I ask you again, watch our lesson on superlatives. They both mean the same thing. Achi zol and zol beyoter are the exact same meaning, the cheapest. I would have expected cleanliness to end in the syllable ut. We have a lot of words in Hebrew that end in ut. That is usually the state of something. However, nikayon is a standalone. Other than knowing how to read from religious practice, I'm a beginner in Hebrew with no significant vocabulary. You mentioned previous classes. Our previous classes are all on YouTube. YouTube.com, youtube.com, Writing Cafe Oleh, hundreds of classes on a wide variety of topics. Really encourage you to look at them. Again, we do this at Cafe Oleh differently than other Hebrew classes. This is meant to supplement formal learning of modern Hebrew, and we do it based on the topics you ask us about. So we really try to make it topic focused rather than grammar focused. We'll teach grammar in the context of teaching you about cleaning products, for example, right? But we have a whole variety of them. It's completely free on YouTube, just as this class is free. Our more advanced class, intermediate advanced class in conversations on Wednesday, likewise. All thanks to Nefesh B'Nefesh. Please be sure to thank them, by the way. It's a free service. It's always good to thank. What is the root for chaydakim? I explained that. Hope that was clear. If it wasn't, you can write back in the Q&A. As I see people asking questions as I'm teaching, I can't do both at the same time, but thank you for being curious about that. Can you use bleach for clothes? That's on you. Typically, bleach is not used on clothes. Economica is a product you will find in some laundry products, but that is up to you if you bleach your clothes or not. How do you say solid versus liquid or foam? The word for solid is mutzak or mutzak, mem vav tzadi kuf. I'll write that here. Vav mutzak. Solid. Our liquid soap says al sabon. Does al mean liquid? No. Al sabon is a product you find a lot in Israel. It's literally translates as anti-soap or non-soap soap. It's a product, frankly, I've only first encountered in Israel. I know it exists elsewhere. Basically, it's a product that doesn't have the same properties that other forms of soap do. You have to look at the ingredients to understand it, exactly what the difference is. typically it usually has very similar ones, but al sabon is a very typical product you find in Israel, which simply translates as non-soap soap. It works the same as soap. It doesn't have the same ingredients that typical soap has. Um, I never quite understood that one either, to be honest. Why does the infinitive for to clean have a feminine ending of to ot? So first off, it's a great question because I'm glad you're seeing patterns. Patterns in Hebrew are really important. Okay, when you see patterns, that usually means something and it usually gets you to other things. Linakot is not a feminine verb and it's not a masculine verb. It's simply a verb. Verbs, particularly in their infinitive form like this, don't have a gender. Linakot is how you say to clean. Now it sounds like ot at the end, right? Because you are taught when you're learning Hebrew that plural nouns that are feminine end in ot, right? Machberot, notebooks. Yeladot, girls. Linakot is simply a coincidence. Okay, the root is nun kuf he, and in a specific form, when this verb gets plugged into, it's what we call in Hebrew. If you want to get very technical, grammatically, it's called gizrat lamed he pa'al. Okay, and any verb that you put in that has a root that ends in the letter hey in the pa'al form of the verb will come out like this. So for example, how do we say to build? Right? The root for to build is bet nun hey, leave note. Leave note is neither feminine nor masculine verb. It's simply a verb that ends in ot. It happens to end in ot, but that tells us about the verb and how it's formed. Linakot is actually PL and not pa'al, but it's the same idea. Linasot, to try. Nun samech he, linasot, to try. Lishtot, to drink. Shin taf he. Okay, so it's good that you're seeing the patterns. In this case, it's a coincidence. How would you write meguvan? Great question. So, migvan, this is also very important. If migvan is variety or diversity or assortment, how do you say diverse? Right? We're going to turn this into an adjective. In this case, it's using the past participle, which is meguvan. It's spelled exactly the same way. I'm going to know from context whether it's a noun or an adjective. Simple as that. Just like you know in English, if a word is a noun or an adjective based on its context, same thing in Hebrew, right? You could have a word, you could have something, it would be terrible Hebrew, just like it would be terrible in English. You could say migvan meguvan, right? A diverse variety or a diverse assortment of things. You would not normally say that in Hebrew, but you could say that and it would look like the two words are being spelled together, right? Diverse adjective, and that's meguvan. Oh, spelled in Hebrew. Meguvan. Okay. Meguvan, meguvenet, meguvanim, meguvanot. Spelled exactly the same way, but one's an adjective, one's a noun. Write that here in case it wasn't clear. Male, noun. Okay. Great question. Words ending in vav yud, nikui, gilui, retsui. Is there a pattern? There is. One of our favorite resources here in Cafe Oleh, which I encourage you to look at, is pealim.com, pealim.com. You can type it in it. You'll see the patterns as well as the things. We'll go over it again. Highly recommend. Just look up pealim. It's a great resource to look at the patterns of words. Okay. Could you send us some photos of Hebrew for kosher Pesach on food products? Great question. We're going to do that in 2 weeks' time from now. right? We have several classes ahead of Pesach. One of them we're going to do is on Pesach itself, food especially. We're going to do a whole thing on kosher le Pesach, because that is obviously a very important part of Pesach for people. Why Migvan doesn't have a Yud? Because it's Migvan. I can't really explain it, especially at this level. It's very complicated, but just know it's without a Yud. Okay. Unfortunately, I need to stop here. And first off, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining. If I didn't get to your questions or you have further questions, you can email us, hebrew@nbn.org.il. We want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover, but any follow-up questions, you're always welcome to be in touch with us. Next week for Cafe Oleh on Monday, we are going to be talking about the passive voice. We've talked about this a lot in class. We've done a whole class on passive, but we're going to come back to it because I want to show you some more examples. And of course, you'll have access to the spreadsheet. Passive voice in Hebrew is really important. It is considered a higher form of Hebrew to speak in the passive. A lot of newspapers and journalism is written in the passive voice. This is quite an opposite to what many of us, especially growing up in English-speaking countries, were taught that it is bad English to write or speak in the passive. In Hebrew, it's the complete opposite. It's considered better Hebrew, and you will watch entire dialogues on TV or on the radio that will almost entirely take place in the passive. If you are not there yet in your formal Hebrew learning, whether current or past, don't worry about it. I'll explain it as simply as I can. It is a very important hurdle to getting towards more proficient and more fluent Hebrew, is to understand not just how to use what it is, but how to use it and how common it's used. So next week, the passive voice, aka it's not that passive. And in the meantime, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining. This recording will be sent to you by email and will be uploaded on YouTube in the next 1 to 2 days. All of our other information is up on our website, on Nefesh B'Nefesh's website, and hope to see you all here next week. Toda Rabba, lehitrot. Take care.